The most common form of pawn weakness encountered in practical play is isolated pawn. Such pawn is bad for two reasons. Firstly, it requires defense, and secondly, the squares immediately in front of it make ideal outposts. Let's see the famous game that Fischer won on his road to the World Championship against the next world champion, Tigran Petrosian. Black has built up a very solid looking pawn center, but he neglected his development. Black uses the time he has gained to break the center. His last move was c4. If center is not adequately supported by pieces, it is merely a target to attack. After c4 we have knight f6. Under no circumstances black should take away from the center, because that would leave him with split pawns. Other alternative was d4, trying to keep the center closed, but it looks suspicious because it's still not developing any piece. After knight f6 we have takes, and take with the pawn. Black would prefer to take with the knight, but after bishop e4, in the long term he would not be able to avoid the isolation of his pawn, so that's why pawn takes. After creating two isolated pawns, Fischer gives us a perfect lesson on how to go about taking full advantage of them. Knight c3, bishop e7, queen a4. A deep move. Black would be really happy if he has time to play castle, bishop b7 and d4. Weak pawns are only bad if they tie down pieces to passive squares in order to defend them. But now if white plays bishop d7 and queen d4, white pieces are well placed while black pieces are stuck behind the deep pawn. That's why Petrosian sets a cunning trap, queen d7, but now rook e1. Fischer doesn't fall for the trap. He could win the exchange by bishop b5, takes and queen takes a8. But after castle, bishop b7 and d4, black's whole position suddenly springs to life and white finds himself in trouble. Always be careful not to grab material at the cost of the coordination of your pieces. After rook e1, we have takes, bishop e6, bishop e3 and castle. The exchange of queens has helped white somewhat, in that without queen, less can happen to interrupt or obscure the basic flow of the game. Still, white has the same strategy. He's gonna use two isolated pawns to tie down the black pieces while maximizing the activity of his own. Bishop c5. One of the secrets of endgame play is to realize which pieces to exchange and which to keep. Here white is exchanging dark square bishop, because since this pawn is on white square, black square bishop cannot be tied down to defend it. And also white wants to use c5 square as an outpost. Rook f2 e8, takes, and now b4. Really logical move. After trading dark square bishops, he doesn't want to allow pawns to escape on dark squares. Now if a5, then b5, and this becomes really dangerous pawn. It's also worth noting that b4 establishes the outpost on c5. King f8. In endgames the king is a very powerful piece. The immediate value of this move is to unpin the bishop, but in the longer term black would like to bring his king to d6 and protect his position better. Knight c5, bishop c8, f3. White also needs to use his king. There is no immediate way to break through, so white has to use the king to increase the pressure. Mistake would be takes, rook e1 and king d6, and black king is active. It's important to not allow black king to cross the e file, because if he goes to the queen side he would release the pieces from their task of defending pawns, and they would be used for more active service. So after f3 we have rook e to a7. Very interesting move. There are no targets in white's position, so black must search for some method to improve his own position. He can try to bring his king to d6, but the only route e8, d8, c7 and d6, and that is long and dangerous. The other possibility is to transfer the bishop to a more active defensive post, so that's why this move, planning to go to d7 and b5. If he tries to get there in some other ways, let's say knight d7, knight b3, exchanges help the defense, knight e5, bishop f1, bishop d7, but now the weakness of the d pawn shows after rook e to d1, and black must abandon his plan in order to save the pawn, and not rook a to d1 because of bishop b5 if takes knight f3, losing a rook. That's why this move, trying to go for the same idea, rook e5, bishop d7, and now slightly surprising decision, takes. You wouldn't want to trade such a dominant knight for a struggling bishop, but here the exchange enables Fischer penetrate with his rooks. It is basically exchanging one advantage, in this case superior minor pieces, for another one, in this case superior rooks. Rook takes, rook c1, controlling the open file, and now rook d6, trying to free up another rook from the defense of the a pawn. Rook c7, knight d7, rook e2, g6. Black doesn't have constructive moves. If the knight moves, then rook e to e7, winning. If king moves, also rook e to e7, and if black tries to trade off his passive rook with rook e8, then takes, rook a7, knight b8, and b5. Takes, check, if knight d7, and then this is a losing king and pawn endgame. After king f2, king d8, takes, king e3, king d6, and king d4. So after king f8, rook b7, rook d8, and king f2. And black has no moves at all. White is gonna simply blockade the d pawn with his king and make a new queen with the a pawn. So back to the position, we were saying that black doesn't have any constructive moves, rook on d6 cannot move, and one more variation, if a5, then bishop b5, and when knight moves, rook e to e7. So because black is forced to defend his pawns with his pieces, now they are really tied up and he can only move his pawns. g6, white now only has to add one more weight, and that is the king, to win the game. After g6, king f2, h5, f4, with the idea of king g3, king h4, king g5, and f5, trying to win this pawn. After h4, we have king f3, f5, and now king e3. Black didn't allow black king to enter the king side, but the chessboard is a big place, there is plenty of room on the other side. d4, of course, king d4 must be prevented. King d2, knight b6. Petrosian is trying to defend more actively. Passive defense would lose to the plan of bishop c4, king d3, and rook e6. After knight b6, rook e to e7, knight d5, rook f7, king e8, rook b7, takes, but now bishop c4 and black resigns. Black is helpless in face of the threat of rook g7 and rook g8 mate. For example, if g5, rook g7, on knight g6 we have bishop f7, and on rook f6, rook g8, rook f8, and bishop f7. A truly classic game. It shows with perfect simplicity all the steps necessary to transform a superior pawn structure into a win. The one underlining theme running through the whole game is the way the black pieces are systematically deprived of all mobility.